All right, this is the lesson in IXL that's going to be between W8 and W9. It says new, and so I'm going to call it W8.5. It's called solving equations with the distributive property. So for this lesson, the first thing that you want to make sure that if, especially when you're solving equations, then if you have a variable inside parentheses, then always use the distributive property. All right. And so what the distributive property tells us is that knowing that parentheses means multiplication, then we're going to multiply using those parentheses. So I'm going to give you an example of why and how this works, okay? So we're going to just use numbers for this time. Not going to use any variables because we want to see why it works. Let's do 5 minus 2. 3 times 5 minus 2. All right, so in this example, you can solve it two ways. So I'm going to rewrite the problem and then show you both ways that it can be done, okay? So first way is you can solve what's inside the parentheses. 5 minus 2 is 3, and 3 times 3 is 9. All right, so now the second way I'm going to solve it is using the distributive property because parentheses means multiplication, so the 3 is next to the parentheses, so we're going to multiply the 3 times the 5. That becomes 15. And then you can multiply 3 times minus 2. 3 times minus 2 is minus 6. 3 times 2 is 6. And so we got a minus 6 there. Because remember, when we distribute, the sign comes with it. All right, and then 5 minus 6 is gonna give you 9. And so the answers are going to be equivalent. You can solve it two ways, and the reason why we need the distributive property is now because we have a variable. So the first way of solving what's inside the parentheses is no longer an option because of that variable. All right. So in this lesson, make sure you use the distributive property, and then you have other options that you're going to have to employ. You might have to combine like terms, or you might have to move terms and balance the equation. All right, so that's a lot of talking for the beginning piece. Let's just look at a couple examples that I've selected. And now when I'm going through these, you can either try to solve it along with me, or you can watch it from start to finish. And if it doesn't make sense why I'm doing one of these steps, then please rewatch me do the problem again, okay? This won't be something that is going to be like, oh, that makes sense, and you do every problem the same way. Each equation is going to look different. So you're going to do the same steps, but you're going to do it and it's going to look different each time for each problem, okay? So let's look at number 1, solve for v. We have parentheses here, so I'm going to distribute 2 times v is 2v. 2 times a plus 2 is now a plus 4. So I distributed, I'm going to bring down the extra plus 4 as part of the equation, and then it equals 10. I recommend that when you're doing these problems, you're doing it on a separate sheet of paper so that you have more space, and you're writing it neatly and trying to stack the problem on top of itself, okay? So that you're writing your work directly underneath the problem. All right, so now I can combine like terms. So I have the plus 4 there. So I'm going to bring down the 2v first. Plus 4 is now plus 8. And then equals 10. Now I recognize this as a two-step equation. I want to get v. So let's move the plus 8 to the other side. And we're going to keep it balanced by subtracting 8 on both sides. 2v now comes down. 8 minus 8 is 0. 10 minus 8 is 2. This says 2 times v, so I'm going to do the opposite. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2. So the 2's cancel out. Now v equals 2 divided by 2 is 1. All right. So I may have gone through that a little fast. I was trying to slow myself down by explaining my steps as I was doing it. Feel free to rewatch this problem. This can be one of the most straightforward examples that you can see, okay? All right, this next example looks very similar, except now the variable is on the right side. But it does not matter because we're going to solve it the same way. We're going to first use the distributive property. So on the left side, we got negative 2 equals, and now we got 2 times y, 2y, and 2 times 2, so that's positive 4. Now we have positive 6 plus 6 at the end. I'm going to rewrite the problem. Again, this time combine the like terms. This is positive 4, because remember the sign comes with it. Positive 4 plus 6, that's a positive 10. Now I'm going to move the 10 to the other side. Negative 2 minus 10 is negative 12. Feel free to use a calculator, okay? You don't want to do all the right steps and just make a mistake on calculations. All right, so now we have negative 12 equals 2y comes down, 10 minus 10 is 0. We can cross that out. So now we can divide both sides by 2, so that the 2's cancel out. Negative 12 divided by 2 is negative 6. Now we just have y on the right side. So y equals negative 6. All right, a third example. It's actually the exact same thing, except this time it's got decimal points. But just because it has decimals does not mean anything changes as far as steps go. What will change is I'm probably going to use my calculator for sure. So third example now, we have to start with distributing here. So 1.8 times b is 1.8b, and then 1.8 times 2.2. That's a positive. Pull up my calculator. 1.8 times positive 2.2 equals 3.96. And then we have a plus 1, 9.82. All right, so now we're going to combine like terms, starting with these two numbers in the middle right there. So we have 1.8b plus 4.96. 9.82. Now let's subtract 4.96 from both sides. So I have 1.8b, that cancels out, equals to 9.82 minus 4.96, 4.86. Now let's divide both sides by 1.8. Wow, 1.8 there. So b equals 4.86 divided by 1.8, 2.7. All right, so the only difference was I need to use a calculator when I have decimals. There's less mental math that I can possibly do. So while I'm solving these problems, even though it looks complicated, I'm really not straining my brain, because what I'm mostly focused on is what is the next step that makes sense to do, okay? So I'm just thinking about what's the next thing I'm going to do. I'm not trying to do a lot in my head. I'm not trying to do things using mental math. I just want to focus on the next step and just keep writing until I arrive at an answer. All right, so this is exactly the same thing as all the previous problems. We're going to distribute here, 2.3b, then we're going to distribute there, and that's a positive. So positive times a positive is a positive. 2.3 times 3.6, 8.26. Wait, let me double check I wrote, 8.28. I knew something sounded a little weird. All right, 8.28. All right, so again, please be careful. If I wrote that wrong and I kept it wrong, I could do everything right, make a mistake on writing a number a little off, and then my answer is completely wrong, okay? So there's a lot of places where mistakes can happen on this assignment. If you're trying to rush through this, you're probably gonna make a mistake. So please slow it down. All right, 8.28 plus 2, that's just gonna be 10.28. I mean, you can use a calculator with that. Just add 2. Oops, I added 2 twice. That's gonna be 10.28. So 19.02, we're gonna subtract 10.28 from both sides. So that cancels out. 2.3b equals, oh, I'm not even trying to subtract this. Let's just write 19.02 minus 10.28, 8.74. So let's divide both sides by 2.3. So b equals, I have 8.74 in my calculator. Let's divide it by 2.3. That's 3.8. All right. These problems do take quite a bit of time to get through, especially if you're still kind of new at this. Ooh, I'm almost done with examples. I'm trying to pull up different looking examples now. So this one is definitely different because there's 2 sets of parentheses, but that just means we're gonna just do the distributive property twice. I think this is example 5. So we're gonna multiply here, making sure that you got a -2 times -8.1. So we have -2 times 8.1 and -8.1, 16.2, and it's positive. 16.2y. And then you have a -2 times, and remember the sign in front goes with it. So again, it's going to be a -2 times a -8.85. -2 times, whoops, -2 times 8.8, -2 times 8.58 negative. All right, sometimes it's typing things in the calculator correctly that's the hardest, the biggest challenge. So 17.16, this time it's a positive 17.16 because it's negative times a negative is a positive. So now on the right side, we're going to distribute and do the same thing. So -3 times 2.2 is going to be -6.6. And then -3 times a negative is going to be a positive. So I'm just going to write my plus there. Just get it set up and I don't forget it later. I'll do 3 times 9.52, 28.56. All right, so on this one, we're not combining like terms or anything. Well, we kind of am, or we kind of are. Like at step 2, I wrote combine like terms or move terms and balance the equation. This time, we're gonna have to start moving the terms and balancing the equation. So if we look at this, I have a y, a y variable on the left side and a y variable on the right side. right? There's really no rule to which one you move, and there's no rule to which term you move either, okay? Because I have a constant here. Remember, vocab word constant, that's just a fixed number. I have constants, I have variables on both sides. So what I just need to do is just move one of those. Just start somewhere. So you can do your problem differently, but I'm just gonna choose, let's just choose a middle problem. And when I say move it, I mean we need to get rid of it. So I'm gonna subtract it on the left side. So I'm gonna also subtract it on the right side to keep this equation balanced. So that means it's gonna cancel out on the left side. So now the problem looks like this. On the left side, we're only left with 16.2y. On the right side, we have negative 6.6y, and we have 28.56. Oh, that's already in my calculator. Minus 17.16. So, and that's 11.4. So positive 11.4. Oh yeah, because the 6 minus 6 is 0. Okay, I'm just going to leave it as 11.4 though. All right, so now we have only 3 terms. We have a variable on the left side here, and we have another variable on the left side there, and they're both y's. And then our last term is a constant. I don't think we could do anything with the constant right now, so let's move the 2 variables, okay? So, and we want to move it so that we have things on both sides of the equations, which means I'm going to move this 6.6y so that I have y's on the left side, and then my constant over here stays on the right side, right? It's kind of isolating a variable. Let's move the y's to one side of the equation. 6.6y. Oops. Let's change that back to our normal color of blue. And I can add it here. 0.2 plus 0.6 is 0.8. 2 carry the 1. And that's 22.8. Y equals 11. Oh, this side jumped ahead. That's going to cancel out. 6.6 cancels out. So now we only have a positive 11.4 on the right side. Here, let's divide both sides by the number next to the y. So it's 22.8. So that 22.8 cancels out. And then we're only left with y equals 11.4 divided by 22.8. And that's 0.5. All right, that's kind of a lot of work. This one is different, so I'm gonna put a star by it, star by number 5. And that's because we have variables on both sides, which is kind of a future lesson that we're gonna work on. But now we're just moving things from one side to the other by using inverse operations. So this is a problem that you're probably gonna wanna rewatch. And I know it's probably a little boring to rewatch something so long, but it's gonna be valuable. All right. So finally, let's move to the last example. I think this is number 6. I hope I haven't miscounted this whole time. And what I want to do is let's start with this distributive property. I'm going to write 4.32 minus 4.1 q minus 9.09 equals negative 5 times 4.1, negative 20.5 q. And then this is a negative 5 times a positive there. That's going to tell me that's going to be a negative. Let's see. Negative 5 times 9.81. That's a negative 49.05. All right. So now when I look at this equation, on the left side, I notice that I have two constants. I got 4.32, and I have a minus, right? The sign in front stays with it. So that tells me I can actually combine those. We're combining like terms now. We have 4.32 minus 9.09. That's a negative 4.77. All right, now we still have the minus 41 or 4.1q equals, and on the right side we just have the 20.5q, negative 20.5q minus 49.05. And now I kind of recognize this as looking very similar to the previous problem, which had variables on both sides. Right, we got q's on both sides, and then we have constants, numbers on both sides. Let's just choose one of these things to move. And I'm going to choose, this time, choose a q. I'm going to choose this and try to combine it with the other one, okay? So I'm going to add 20.5q to both sides. So now this problem becomes a negative 4.77 because that comes straight down. I have 4.1q, but it's a negative because that sign in front stays with it, okay? Negative 4.1 plus 20.5. That's 16.4. Positive 16.4q equals. And on the right side of the equation, this actually cancels out. So we're only left with a negative 49.05 left on the right side of the equation. So we want to isolate this variable. We want to isolate q. So that means the constant over here, move it. But let me change the color of that so you see exactly steps that get moved. So 4.77 plus 4.77. So now that cancels out on the left side. So we have positive 16.4q equals 49.05. Whoops, type it correctly. 49.05 plus 4.77, and that's a negative 44.28. Now I'm going to have to divide both sides by 16.4 so that it cancels out right there, leaving q alone. So I'm going to also divide it on the other side of the equation. So now q equals negative 44.28 divided by 16.4. That equals negative 2.7. These problems take a lot of work, but that doesn't mean you can't get it. You are in 8th grade, and whether you believe it or not, you will be going on to high school next year taking algebra, and these are the steps that you need to practice and hopefully get as close to mastering as possible to be successful in high school. All right. I'm exhausted from talking because these problems took a while. But once you practice these steps, then it sort of becomes a lot easier to recognize which step is necessary to keep moving on forward in this problem, okay? And so instead of writing complete steps down for you to follow, like first step is do the distributive property if you can. Second step, combine like terms or move terms and balance the equation. It's just ideas. I'm not telling you exactly add or subtract. I'm telling you, you want to do combine like terms. So you got to know how that's going to look. Or if you want to balance the equation, you got to understand what the inverse is so that you get to choose a term and then move it to the other side. All right, there's a lot involved in this. I am not sure how long this video is. I hope that you made it to the very end, especially those last two examples. If you can do those last two, then you could probably do everyone before that because those have fewer steps involved, okay? All right, good luck.